The LED studio lights cast a cold, flat, sterile white light, like a morgue, turning my cutting mat into an operating table. The 3 glass eyes of the cameras pointed into the darkness in front of me. My monitor was split 3 ways, showing the soulless angles. One straight at me, one close-up on my hands, and one macro. It was 3 in the morning. The damp cold of the basement seeped through my hoodie, clinging to my skin like moss, carrying the musty smell of wet earth. Alex's craft corner was dying, one view at a time. I needed a hit, and that's why I turned to it. The VHS tape. It was jammed in the darkest corner of a thrift store. The sleeve was blank, just a handwritten title in faded ink. Simple folds for children. No brand, no date. It was a perfect enigma. The plan was simple. A modern remake with 4K sharp resolution. I hit play on the old VCR. The motor word, groaning. My studio monitor flickered. A blast of white static, then settled. The image appeared. The quality was abysmal. A single, fixed angle, pointing straight down at a filthy, matted beige carpet. 2 hands entered the frame. They made me pause. They were strangely pale, almost translucent, revealing a roadmap of blue veins. The fingers were unnaturally long, thin, moving with a ghostly flexibility, as if they had no bones. There was no narration, no music, just the steady, thin hiss of the magnetic tape, like the breathing of an invisible entity. I took a deep breath, flipped on the mic. "Hey guys, Alex here." My voice rang out, painfully fake. "Welcome back to the Craft Corner. Today, we're doing something a little different. I found this vintage gem." I started recording. On the VCR monitor, those pale hands had already picked up a sheet of thin, baby blue paper. The first model. A simple paper boat. I picked up my own sheet of bright, glossy teal paper. All right, step 1. We're going to fold the paper in half, horizontally. Make sure your creases are nice and sharp. I ran my thumbnail along the fold. There was a rasping sound. But it wasn't the crisp sound of high-quality paper. It was drier, more brittle, like tearing a piece of dry skin. The paper under my fingers felt cold, much colder than the room. I finished the boat. And there we have it, a classic little paper boat. I set it aside, right under the macro lens. On the VCR monitor, the other hands had also finished. They placed their boat on the dirty carpet. The boat, on the tape, looked soggy. Its edges were dark and limp, as if it had just been dipped in water. A faint unease trickled through my chest. The second model, a tulip. I chose a sheet of rich, crimson paper. The hands on the screen did the same, but their color was duller, like dried blood. We began to fold. The only sounds in the basement were my paper and the steady, monotonous hiss from the VCR. Then I heard it. A small, dry rustle. It came from my right, just out of the camera's view. I froze. My heart hammered. The sound stopped. I glanced at the audio meters. The needles hadn't budged. I forced myself to continue. Valley fold. Mountain fold. The red paper in my hand started to feel different. It wasn't cold anymore. It was becoming warm. And it wasn't crisp. It felt thicker, tougher, like leather. I smelled something. Sweet, but rotten. Like moldy old paper mixed with the smell of rust, of old pennies. I tried to make a complex diagonal fold. The paper resisted. It didn't want to bend. I had to use force, pressing my thumb down hard. A small, damp snap. The sound was like breaking a fresh, sappy twig. I flinched, letting go. I looked up at the VCR monitor. The pale hands had finished the tulip. Tay held it up. It was grotesque. The petals were twisted, curling inward like talons. In the center there was just a deep, dark tear. I took a shaky breath. I made the last few folds, clumsily. When I opened the petals, my hand was trembling. My flower didn't look like a flower. It was sharp aggressive, and in the middle, the paper had torn slightly. It looked exactly like a small, gaping mouth. Nausea rose in my throat. Enough. I reached for the mouse, aiming for the stop recording button. I needed to get out of here, but as my finger came within an inch of the mouse, the hiss from the VCR suddenly changed. It spiked in volume, becoming a piercing shriek, long and full of menace. The LED studio lights flickered, then died. The basement was plunged into darkness. Only the sickly green light from the VCR, the 3 red dots from the cameras, and the glow from my monitor remained. Then they flashed back on, brighter than before. Blinding. I snatched my hand back. My eyes darted to the VCR monitor. The pale hands had stopped. They were lying there, waiting. They knew I was about to stop. They were waiting for me to continue. The air in the room thickened, heavy as lead. An invisible pressure pushed down on my shoulders, forcing me to sit up straight, to face the camera. I couldn't stop. I had to finish the video. I looked down at the disgusting red flower in my palm. I wanted to destroy it. I clenched my fist, crushing it. A wet crunch. It was not the sound of paper crumpling. It was crisp and wet. Exactly like I had just crushed a large cricket. A cold, viscous fluid seeped from the paper, sticking to my palm. I yelled and threw the wadded-up thing away. It hit the concrete floor, and it didn't stay still. Slowly, horribly, it unfolded itself. The damp, red petals twitched. The torn mouth in the center gaped open, then closed, as if it were breathing. It began to drag itself. On the VCR monitor, the pale hands rose, and they clapped. A single, slow, dry clap. Then the VCR scene changed. The hands retrieved a new sheet of paper, a sheet of pure white. They began to fold the third model, a paper crane. Trembling, I reached for a sheet of my own white paper. It was freezing cold. The 3 cameras were still active. I had no choice. All right, guys, my voice was a horse crackle. We're moving on to the final model, the paper crane. I began to fold. Diagonal fold. Half fold. The square base. My hands wouldn't obey. They were clumsy, fumbling. The white paper felt like marble. Smooth, heavy, and cold. The smell of old pennies returned, overwhelming, suffocating. Rustle. That sound again. Clearer. I glanced to my right. The blue paper boat. It was no longer where I had placed it. It had moved toward the center of the table, and on the floor, I heard a small, wet, dragging sound. The red flower. It was inching along, heading for the leg of my table. They were coming closer. Panicked, I turned back to the crane, trying to fold faster. I was at the part where you form the long neck. I pulled the paper up gently to shape it, and it caught me, a cut as sharp as a razor, right across the pad of my thumb. Blood welled up immediately. A single, thick, dark red drop. It fell onto the white paper. And the paper, it drank it. It sucked the blood up instantly, like a thirsty sponge. The stain spread, but not like ink. It spread in thin, branching lines, like veins. At the edges, it turned black. The instant the last of the blood soaked in, the VCR monitor flickered. The image of the pale hands vanished. It was replaced by something else. A dark road, filmed through a windshield, being lashed by driving rain. The wind howled from the speakers. I recognized the road, County Road 12, outside my hometown. The audio came from the speakers, not a hiss, the thud squeak, thud squeak, thud squeak of the windshield wipers, and behind it, a voice. A woman singing a lullaby, the song my mother used to sing. "No," I whispered, "this isn't real." On the screen, something appeared in the weak wash of the headlights. A bicycle, a cyclist in a bright yellow rain slicker, the driver in the video. The camera angle from inside the car. The driver was me. 8 years ago. I was watching it. I was watching it again. I remembered the impact. A short, dull, wet thud, the sound of metal grinding. The video on the monitor jerked. It spun, then it stopped. The bicycle was twisted by the side of the road, and the yellow rain slicker. It was lying motionless in a puddle that was slowly staining red. I hadn't stopped. My foot had slammed on the accelerator. I had driven away. I made up a story. I told the cops I hit a deer. I hit a deer, I said to the empty room. I looked down at the table. The paper crane was finished, but I didn't remember finishing it. It wasn't a crane. It was so wrong. Its neck was too long, twisted. The wings looked like a shattered rib cage. And right in the center, where my drop of blood had fallen, the paper had puckered into a rough, dark mass. Exactly like a shut-eye. It was standing on the table. It was standing up. Rustle. The blue boat had slid to the very edge of the table. Its bow pointed right at my chest. Dragged, the red flower had climbed the table leg, its torn mouth resting on the tabletop. They were surrounding me. I was trapped. The studio lights beat down, yellow and cruel, leaving me no place to hide. I tried to scream, but no sound came out. My throat was dry, as if it were filled with paper. The smell of rust, the smell of guilt, enveloped me. I recoiled, slamming into the wide-angle camera tripod. The camera toppled. I saw myself on the 2 remaining monitors. My face was skeletal white, mouth open in a silent scream. But behind me on the VCR monitor, the image was no longer the accident. The pale hands were back. They were there, on the dirty carpet. And they were folding. Not paper anymore. Their material was a thin, bright yellow vinyl. They were folding a raincoat. The yellow raincoat. I turned my head, looking at the table. The white crane stood there, its eye of dried blood. It was open. It was watching me with the cold attention of a judge. The blue boat slid off the edge of the table, drifted in a slow arc, and landed on the floor. Blocking the door, the crane lifted its broken neck. It made a sound, like dry bones knocking together, and on the VCR monitor, the pale hands finished the raincoat. They took one final sheet of white paper. They began to fold a human figure, a paper doll, with a face that had no eyes, no nose, no mouth. But I knew who it was. It was me. Then, with the precision of an executioner, they placed the paper figure down. One hand held it flat, the other pressed down. They began to fold it. In half, a terrible, sharp pain exploded in my chest. I couldn't breathe. In quarters, I heard a crack. Loud, clear. From my own chest, I felt my ribs compress, splinter, twisting, crumpling. My heart felt like it was being squeezed by an invisible hand. I collapsed to the floor, convulsing, gasping. My vision narrowed, tunneling, until all I could see was the table above me, where the white crane still stood watch, its bloody eye staring unblinking, and the red flower, which had finally crawled onto the tabletop, its mouth now wide open. Facing me, the last sound I heard didn't come from the computer speakers, but from the VCR itself. It was a dry, whispering voice, made of 1,000 rustles. The final folds for a bad child. And the darkness took me. Thanks for watching until the end. What was your favorite part? Please let me know in the comments below. If you found this video helpful, don't forget to leave a like, share it, and subscribe to the channel so you won't miss my future content. Your support is my biggest motivation. Thank you all so much.